Okay, so we're in Jenkins, the new Jenkins building, Martin D. Jenkins Behavioral Social Sciences building. I have on my shades occasionally because I don't have my glasses, so I really can't see you guys, but the shades are helping my eyes, which are bothered right now. We're talking about the Baltimore Police Department Monitoring Team survey, where we are interested in collecting data as early as the end of September through the mid part of November of 2018. The survey is called the Community's Experiences and Perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department. One thing that happens when we do human subject research is we respect the humans that we are collecting data from. And in fact, we don't necessarily have to use the word data. We can actually say information. We're doing an interview. We're trying to get to know what people are thinking because it personalizes this process. Today I'm wearing this Henrietta Lacks t-shirt. When I attend the Henrietta Lacks Symposium, I take my undergraduate students, and we basically acknowledge ethics and morals and values relative to doing human subject research and the reality of this process for people in cities like Baltimore, in Baltimore in particular, because Henrietta Lacks, if we all don't know, was a woman who cells were taken from her. She was a cancer patient at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and she didn't know that the Hopkins doctors at the time in the 1960s were actually using her cells to do research. Those cells have saved thousands of lives because of what they were able to do. Her cells replicated in a way that they saw fascinating. Her family nor she was ever compensated. And when it comes to this city and in cities across the country and places across the country, people are skeptical about being a part of any research. So one of the things we're acknowledging is that we here at Morgan State University, I'm the principal investigator for this particular project, we had to have this survey IRB approved. The Institutional Review Board had to approve this, and we're going to get an approval letter soon, and that's why we have to wait until next week in order to even think about collecting this data. We were able to pilot this survey. 2 weeks ago, we began piloting it, asking students in the stats class to take the survey. I had some other people who were taking a look at it, answering questions. It's actually with flaw, like any other written document. There are some flaws. Even though I've combed through it a lot, we sent it to the Out for Justice folks. We sent it to some people on the monitoring team to take a look at. There's still going to be some flaws. But for now, we have this living document. The folks in the room will have access to the survey. After we convene tonight, you can actually go through it yourself and see if there's some questions about or problems that you see with some of the questions or concepts here. We'll note that there are some terms that even I won't have the same definition as you guys in the room. And our respondents, our people in the community, won't have the same, responses or idea about the terms. We're going to have a glossary of terms so that we can be on the same page relative to some of these concepts. So as the survey is introduced on this electronic platform, and I'll actually use this here to show it. This is what it actually looks like. There's an introduction. So basically, you're introduced to Morgan State University's Urban Research Office. Morgan State University's IUR office is responsible for the Baltimore City Police Department's Monitoring Team's Community Survey, the Community's Experiences and Perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department. Pratt Harris, that's me, responsible as principal investigator. And then there is Roberto Alejandro, PhD and JD from Background Media and editor-in-chief of Stay Up News. We're working together as co-investigators collecting this information. Just a background about Roberto. Roberto is a former reporter for the Afro newspaper here in the city. Less than a year ago, he actually conducted his own community survey on the Baltimore City Police. He shared this information with me, and it was very interesting and enlightening. When this call came up to do this survey and respond to this proposal to do this survey for the city, I immediately contacted Roberto, and we've been working together ever since. He's the person who's supplying some of the bilingual folks as well. So it's a team effort. Team meaning we have the principal investigators, we have research assistants, community folks who are actually collecting this data, and we are actually a team. I have it outlined that it's a team of 14 research assistants. I'm not sure what that's going to totally look like, but we know we need some people on the ground to help collect the data. So this is how it's introduced. And then we have the statement from the Morgan State University Institutional Review Board. It's a requirement. This is a consent statement that gives the respondents, the people in the community, information about the survey that you'll be collecting during interviews, and their rights as participants, the very rights that Henrietta Lacks was never given, by the way. This survey should take no more than 30 minutes. I'll tell you that the instrument, when I printed it, is thick. It's very thick. It's really thick. But there are questions on here that don't apply to the participants, like your neighborhoods. I think in this class we had one student who says, I'm in this particular neighborhood, that's it. Don't really frequent other parts of the city. So he only had to answer that one question on that section, and there are like 5 pages that he can just flip through, or 5 screens he can flip through. So one of the things that we all can do is take a look at this consent statement, and I'll just read some excerpts from it. Our participants are invited to participate in the community experiences and perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department. We hope to learn about your experiences. This is what we're telling them with the Baltimore City Police Department and perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department. The study is being conducted by myself and Roberto Alejandro. Participants were selected and will be selected as possible participants because they are at least 18 years of age or older. That's a requirement. They currently or have lived, worked, attended school or training, or visited the city of Baltimore. Those are the requirements for participation. 30 minutes again, voluntary. If a person decides not to participate, it's okay. If they're starting and then they stop, it's okay. If they have questions, they can contact me or Dr. Isuk, who's in charge of Morgan State University's IRB office. And one of the requirements for the interviewers, which will be you guys, is that you collect a signed copy of the consent form. So this is available electronically, but you'll have a paper copy where persons are signing. One of the most important things to remember is that we're protecting the privacy of our participants. This information will be kept confidential. Anything that identifies a person will be kept confidential. So while you have their signature, it'll be kept separate from the electronic survey. So we'll take the signatures and store them to say we got consent, and we'll put that in a locked file cabinet as we collect them. But then there's this electronic survey where that data goes into a password protected file, which I will maintain. And there won't be any connection between the two. Welcome. Come on in and sit down. We're just getting started looking at the survey. And in the first section of the survey, we're asking general questions about the community and police experiences. So we start off, in a mild way to kind of get a sense of who the persons are that we're talking to. The first question is where were you born? And again, as we're all combing through this document, we want to see if we missed out on anything. So far, we acknowledge that persons could be born in the city, in the county, in another Maryland county, in Washington, D.C., outside of Maryland, but in the United States and outside of the United States. Those are the areas that we have. Then we ask if persons live, work, attend school, or visit the city of Baltimore. And thanks to our students who did the piloting, we were able to include students who are actually coming to the city just to go to school. So questions about where they were raised in Baltimore City, if they were here for the most part of their childhood, if they've been here for less than or more than 5 years, if they were here before April 2015 or since April 2015, if they currently work here, and so on and so forth. This is a comprehensive list of things that one has to ask of research participants. And then we ask about how people feel regarding their safety. Overall, how safe do you feel in Baltimore City? How would you describe we jump right in this section. This gets elevated with this particular question. How would you describe the Baltimore City murder rate? How would you describe the crime rate? So we distinguish between murder as a specific crime and then crime in general. And there's a reason that murder is asked first and then crime, because we want to make sure people are focusing in on one thing and then having a general understanding or sharing about crime in general. Okay? And then we continue. We ask them why they believe the crime rate is the way they described it, for example. As we continue, we ask, of neighborhoods where you reside or have resided, worked, attend, or visited at least 2 times per week, which is the most safe or healthy in your opinion? So for you guys, when you hear safe or healthy, what comes to mind? Come on in. When you hear health or safety, what comes to mind? Healthy or safe, what comes to mind? Does it make sense if we say which is the most safe or healthy?
Safe. I would say safe.
Okay, but healthy, should it be included, or
Does healthy
meaning like it can mean a lot of things. Right. So we can actually ponder what we mean by that if we're going to include it. So healthy, we can actually have a term that in glossary of terms. Healthy could be whether or not you have food resources. Healthy can be whether or not your home is lead safe. Things of that nature. Those are, or your general well-being. Say it again. Pollution, air quality, those types of things. So we have to clear. And it might be that we'll have a safe one and then a healthy one separate. So we'll come up with that as well. We'll modify this as necessary. But that was a question that came up from the monitoring team. What actions do you do or have you taken to increase your safety in the city? So there's a litany of items on here. For example, walk or travel with others. And we go down to carry a weapon. Now, one of the things we're not doing for our participants is we're not asking them if the weapon that they carry or may not carry. We're not asking about the type. We're not asking about whether or not it's registered or not registered, legal or not legal. We just want to know how they maintain their own safety in this city. And I'll just give you a little sidebar. So on November the 1st, I'll be presenting at the University of Maryland a lecture on, this class is going to be there, by the way. It's in the evening during class time. But it's a lecture on whether or not, it's called You Got Hazards. So basically we're acknowledging that all weapons, guns in particular, are hazards, no matter how it's used. It could be a weapon that an officer has. It could be a weapon that a civilian has that's registered. It can be a weapon that a civilian has that's not registered. It can be a weapon that's legal or illegal. It is a hazard to human safety. So regardless of how a person or what they have, it's still a weapon. So we're acknowledging the possibility with that particular item. Contacting the police is another possibility in terms of increasing safety. We ask on a scale of 1 to 10 if you would or have experienced any of the following in Baltimore City. So one of the things that happens on this section, and then this may need to be broken up so it won't be problematic for the interviewer, because you'll say, well, which one is 1 and which one is 7, and then we're happening 8, 9, and 10. But I'll tell you about that in a second. We'll modify that where necessary, and it's necessary to do that. But what you would do on this one is you scroll to the left or right to get to 1 through 10. Okay, so those items are actually included at the you have to scroll at the bottom. But we're going to fix this so it can be more user-friendly for the interviewer. And again, you can see 9 now because I scrolled over to the right. 1 is missing because it moved over. I'm trying to help the video people understand what's happening. And then the next section is on policing perceptions and opinions. This is probably there are so many most important parts of this process. There's a lot of important things to note about this process. We individually have our own perceptions about everything. The kinds of foods we like, the kind of people we hang out with, the type of entertainment we engaged in, those types of things. One of the things we cannot do as interviewers is inject our opinions or thoughts on the respondent. So what we're going to be doing is just asking, using like the same tone of voice, questions for participants. And for example, the first one is, overall, how satisfied are you with policing around the world? What do you think about policing around the world. They can answer very satisfied to very dissatisfied. They can say neutral. My thoughts on policing around the world are based on what? They'll tell us. Is it because of their encounters with police, their relationship with police, their relationship within the community, blah, blah, blah. Then there's questions about perceptions about or satisfaction with police in the United States. Same litany of items like why do you have these perceptions? How satisfied are you with policing in Baltimore City? Is it because of your encounters with police? Is it because of what you've seen on social media? Those types of things are asked of participants. On average, I encounter Baltimore City police officers how often? Daily or never? And that's a possibility. Do Baltimore City police officers allow communication with them? Yes or no, based upon one's experience. They can say yes, no, or I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't have a relationship with them. I haven't had to call them for service. What do Baltimore City police officers do that does or does not allow communication with them? There are opportunities or moments where you have to skip items, but you have to still ask the question. You can say, well, earlier you said that you're not sure if they allow communication with them, right? But if you may have an opinion as to why they would or would not allow communication with them. Someone can say that based upon their experience with police in general. Okay, so you still want to ask the question. And one of the things that will happen when you're actually out on the ground collecting this data is that this form, this document, this survey, there'll be modifications made to give you instructions on what to do. And those instructions will be written differently than what you see. So there may be in all caps, in parentheses, so you'll know, skip this item, or if this, then that. So just be mindful of that. What do you believe the Baltimore City Police Department could do to make it easier for people to communicate with them? Again, another question you would ask of participants. The responsibility of the PI, that would be myself and Dr. Alejandro, is to make the connection between some of the questions you're asking and how it applies. So let's say someone has no relationship with the city police department or no contact with them. We can say, well, they have this idea, but they're also people who never had contact with police officers in the city. The next section is the fun section. The entire survey is fun. But we're asking questions about where people either work, live, or attend school or visit in the city. We are acknowledging every possible neighborhood in the city of Baltimore in this particular section, these sections, okay? So you would ask your participant, do you live, work, or have lived, work in the east side of Baltimore? Attended school or visits at the east side of Baltimore? And then if so, well, what neighborhoods? You would select the neighborhoods and you would ask them to tell you which time of day do you visit. Let's say this respondent never visited East Baltimore at all, never attended school, never worked there. You would just say not applicable for every one of these items. Does that make sense? Not applicable for every one of these items. Then the next section is about encounters with police officers or experiences in the city in general, in East Baltimore here. Have you ever encountered a Baltimore City police officer in East Baltimore? How would you describe the officer or officers you encountered? And they can tell you a number of things. They gave me a ticket or warning. They did not make an arrest. This question, they did not make an arrest, we're being mindful that we're not invading on person's privacy in so much as having someone tell us about their experiences that could label them as deviant or something. So we're not asking, have you been arrested? We're not asking that. We're saying, did they make an arrest involving you or somebody else? That way we don't know the story about whether or not it was them. If they choose to share, that's different. But we're not asking the question because it really doesn't matter. It's about what the activity was at the point of encounter with the police. And then they can give you open-ended responses. Please describe the experiences when you encountered a Baltimore City police officer in an East Baltimore neighborhood. They can willingly explain or describe the experience if they had one. These questions are included in every neighborhood in the city or every section of the city. So this next section, for example, is Central Baltimore, which includes downtown, the Inner Harbor. Then we go into North Baltimore, which includes Village of Cross Keys, certain sections that some of us may be familiar with, Hamden, Loyola, and the College of Notre Dame, those schools in that area. And again, the same questions that we had from the East Baltimore section are included. Then we have Northeast Baltimore, which would include like Morgan State University, so that would be Northwood, Baltimore. Northwood, this area here.
Are they basically like the police district?
No, it's more so. It's more neighborhoods than anything. Because there are far more neighborhoods included than there are police districts. So it's just neighborhoods. We want to know about the neighborhoods.
No, I meant the broad category because I saw.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. And also the way the city is divided. Northeast, Northwest, Central, Southeast. Yeah, you're right. Southwest, yes.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, basically that. But then we break it down into the neighborhoods per area. Thank you. And then Northeast Baltimore, we're still here looking at some of those issues or experiences relative to contact with police officers in the city. Then we have Northwest Baltimore City. And again, some people may say, I don't visit or haven't lived in, or, just select, not applicable for those people. And then South Baltimore. Same kinds of questions. Southeast Baltimore. That's Upper Fells Point area. That's an example of a neighborhood. And then again, Southwest Baltimore. Here we have Southwest Baltimore. Okay, then the survey. So that's the meat of the survey. The neighborhoods people lived, work, or attend school or have visited. Then their experiences within each of those neighborhoods, and it can give you some qualitative information like their actual experiences. And then it concludes on the demographic section. So our goal is to conclude the survey on a pleasant end, as opposed to like ending with what was your encounter, and if it was negative, it could very well be an unpleasant end to the survey. So we ask about gender, race, ethnicity, their age of their last birthday. So they have to tell you how old they turned on their last birthday. So if their birthday is tomorrow, I still need to know how old you turned last time you had a birthday, not tomorrow. Their marital status, living situation. So we go from homeless through member of a multi-extended family household, financial situation. We don't ask about their income at this point. It's just about whether or not they're able to make ends meet. I might be able to add that just, because it sounds like something people couldn't identify with. How many people total are they responsible for in the city, beyond the city? We ask about how many children that people may or may not have. How many children do they have currently who are being raised in the city of Baltimore who are under the age of 18? How many children have they raised in the city of Baltimore, even if the child is 35 years old? Their child is 35 years old. We ask about their level of education, less than fifth grade through PhD or doctorate completed. And that's how it concludes right now. And maybe a little something else. Like, would you like to share anything else? Something like that could be included at the end of the survey. How many of us have done like interviews where you're collecting survey data? So there are a couple things I'm going to mention that you may or may not agree or disagree regarding. Number one, doing survey research where you're actually doing interviews, it is truly a learning on the job experience. So once you do your first one, and or because all of us would have piloted the survey between now and the time you actually collect the survey, meaning you've answered the questions yourself, you'll get a sense of like the flow. And then if you've done, how many of us have done telemarketing? Anyone done telemarketing? Do people do telemarketing anymore? I actually did it. I was a telemarketer, I'm sure, for like 2 agencies when I was in college. But just like telemarketing, if you've ever done it, you start to remember like the sequence. Oh, next section, this section, and it starts to make sense, right? One thing we want to be mindful of is that's number one. So repetition helps to further inspire accuracy and or flow of collecting this information. Number two, as I said earlier, we want to be mindful of our tone and our subjectivity in this process. So it's not about what you think, not about what you experience. It's about what the person you're interviewing has said to you. That's number two. Number three, collecting data or research data does not allow us to have a bleeding heart. You can, because we are human. We actually, care about human beings, but we can't solve a problem by collecting the data. Well, we can tell our participants they're able to add to the information that we need to know, because right now Baltimore City is under a consent decree which says they have to be monitored and they have to be able to allow the people to share what their experiences are. So they're actually able to add to the body of knowledge relative to what's happening in this particular city, and talking to you may be therapeutic, although we're not licensed clinicians, therapeutic for participants. Like, somebody really cares about what I experienced in this city, or what I experienced in general. They might start talking to you about their aches and pains and all that kind of stuff. But again, you're going to keep it to a minimum. You only have a certain amount of time to get it done. And you're going to just do your best to, find out from people what their experiences are. So those who've done survey research, anything else you want to chime in on relative to your experience? And I have my shades on again because I can't see, because my glasses are, I don't know where the glasses are. I haven't seen my glasses since last week sometime, but I'll find them eventually. I have 3 pair. One is broken. I didn't want to wear those. But the other 2 are like hiding from me. Probably because I can't see them, Yes.
So this is more like this story that the things that you might think are a basic question, just don't be surprised if every single question on this, somebody's going to be like completely confused about what it means. Even like, what is your name? Well, you mean, my nickname? I mean, it's just my married name, because everybody pretty much has experienced in their life, whether they wanted to or not, filling out forms.
Right.
And certain parts of the forms just got them confused.
Yep.
And they might have maintained that confusion ever since. Like my name was, I remember somebody, their name was too long to fit in the boxes. And so they learned to have a shortened version of their name. And so, like I said,
a whole host of things.
Right, that can extend the time. You think you're just, going to zip along, and this was going to be the one that's going to hold you up, and you find out, again, just using the name as an example, it's 10 minutes on
that alone. So you want to just say, let's get back to it. You have to, you are an actress or actor in this process. Not because you're fake or phony, because we're not fake or phony people. It's because we are actually playing a role, and we need to get it done. So you're like, they're talking about the whole, and they're going off on a tangent. You're just like, that's good. Okay, let me just get back to that, and let's get back to this. So you have to actually kind of intervene in that way to kind of get it done. You said something. For us, we'll have like a resource guide, right? And basically, we're going to be talking to human beings in the city of Baltimore. We're human beings, and we're in the city of Baltimore right now, and we care about human beings anyway, right? So if someone has a need or a need for service or something like that, we'll have a resource guide on hand so that they can kind of flip through to see if they can, benefit from something. As researchers, we're responsible for doing, it's called mandatory reporting. So if someone is potentially being harmed or is being harmed physically, especially, or mentally, possibly, in terms of how we'll handle that, we have to do certain things. So we have to make phone calls and or report, at least to me, that this person experienced this, and then I can make the decision on what to do next. Okay? For example, if a child is being harmed and you know it because they said it, like, my daughter is tied up. Why did I just say that? I don't know why I just said that, but my daughter is tied up in the back of the room because she was not listening to me. That's when you say, okay, there's a problem. you would immediately contact me or Roberto, and we'll kind of give you the protocol. Then we'll make the calls because we're mandatory reporters. That's the ethics, morals, and things we have to follow as researchers because we're talking to humans. Also, someone has experiencing some reoccurrence of or at least like a traumatic moment because you're talking about something that affects them psychologically. They start to cry uncontrollably. You can't console them. That resource guide also includes mental health assistance for those persons that can be on call to make certain that they're getting some services relative to that experience of trauma. So there's layers to this process. It's like, we're collecting survey data, but the human side of it is really what's paramount. And that's partly why during the interview is so important, because you can't give someone a survey, ask them to fill it out, and not really engage with, first of all, if they understand what you're asking, but secondly, what the impact is of that experience. Part of what you'll be doing is just taking minimal notes on, this person, it was pleasant or not pleasant, or we went through it just fine, or they had some additional needs and we had to make some phone calls to make certain that need was taken care of. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So what if somebody wants you to be reporting the encounter with the police? They try to get something done about it, and then it didn't get done, and so finally they got somebody
who's
live,
listening
right?
to them,
who's captive, and it's like, you're doing research on this. You really need to report Officer Jones. This is whatever. How is that? Because I think that could.
That's very important. So part of what we'll have what's in hand that says these are the protocols that we've been given to make certain that you make that report. Beyond that, though, we have to acknowledge that we are researchers only.
Right. And
our task is not to do that piece that you need done in terms of making the report. Right. But part of what we'll do is make note of it and share that here, because that's a part of the data, actually. Right. That there has been a report and nothing happened. And I actually need to add that question. Did you file a complaint? And then what happened? So I need to add that as well. But again, that's data. So we need to acknowledge that that's been shared during this time of this particular interview. So that's very important. But also, we're researchers first. The bleeding heart, by the way, comes in when there's an intervention. So that means this community survey is being conducted. We know that Baltimore City is under a consent decree right now. But now these are the programs and services and initiatives that the police department with the community has now set up, given the findings of this survey. That's when the bleeding heart comes in. That's when someone who's a researcher who might really want to do the service part can actually step in and say, you know what, now I want to provide these services and be a resource to provide these things for people in the city of Baltimore with the police department. So that's when you can use it. But it's not, at the data collection stage, it's truly just data collection. You had a question?
Yes. The survey, from what I saw, is very extensive. I thought about the different Gen X's and so on. So here it is, you knock on someone's door and you're standing there for approximately, say, half an hour. So hypothetically, 15 minutes through, say, I'm cooking or something, we're going to finish this at another time. What we do in those scenarios?
Well, we'll make note of that. So each survey will have a default ID number based upon who the interviewer is and the time that the survey was recorded, because it comes up on my end on the Excel spreadsheet and it'll say the time. So then survey not completed, it'll be a note made, on the instrument itself. And then based upon what you've decided with that particular respondent, we'll come back tomorrow, same time, complete the second half. And you can actually remember or go through or confirm with me, where did I end? Okay, now we're going to pick up on page or section 5 and continue the survey.